found some blood.
He's lying. There was no blood.
Comes a chilling new tale.
You're a devil.
Ogroff, France's answer to the golden age of the slasher movie. The best film ever made by someone called Norbert. But yeah, I thought it was really good. It's a fun movie rather than a boring movie. It's a fun movie rather than a boring movie. It's a fun movie rather than a boring movie. Ogroff. France.
Hi, this is Lisa Loring, Wednesday from the Addams Family, A Blood Frenzy and Ice, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues. And, well, we're going to France, and not necessarily known for its slasher movies from the Golden Age. And we're covering Ogroff, the Mad Mutilator, or just Mad Mutilator. And we're joined by a friend of the show, Matt Minter, who is, I would say, you've kind of shoehorned, or you've, that's not probably not the right word, but you've kind of introduced us to this movie, Matt. So are you looking forward to hearing what we have to say about this?
I'm excited. I can't wait to hear what you say about Ogroff.
Okay. Well, I must admit, it was one of those movies that was on my radar for many years, but it wasn't the first time watch for me, so I was a virgin amongst the living dead, literally, with this. So, yes, it's going to be a fun one to talk about. So, how are you doing today, Matt? Anyway, thanks for coming on the show.
I'm good. I worked some weird hours last night, so I'm maybe going on less sleep than usual, but I'm very excited to be here.
Whereabouts in the world are you, Matt?
I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, so probably not too far away from Joseph and Nathan.
Okay, probably same time zone then, are you?
Yeah, I believe so.
I imagine sleep deprivation probably will aid your thoughts on this movie, perhaps, although no spoilers going forward. But talking of that part of the world, Nathan isn't with us this show, unfortunately, although I do imagine Nathan may have been a big champion in this movie because he is, he will be back on the next show, but he's had a couple of things he has to sort out today, unfortunately, but I'm sure he will be back and let us know his thoughts about this movie. But Erik, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm topless.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
So,
there
okay.
you go. You're welcome.
I have, that's a visual that I will, it's going to haunt me in my dreams, perhaps. And Joseph, are you topless?
No, but I'm bottomless.
Well, it's that kind of podcast. So, and as ever, we've had quite a few kind of guests on the show recently. So, Matt, you do see behind the dirty curtain that is The Hysteria Continues. But as you probably know, we start things off by having a little chat about what we've been watching recently. So, Matt, is there anything you've seen you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah. First movie I want to talk about is Dr. Giggles. This is actually a first-time watch for me, but I've got memories ingrained into my brain of commercials of Dr. Giggles playing nonstop back when I was a kid, which probably would have been around 1992. I kind of always assumed this movie would be terrible, like kind of on par with the most mediocre Charles Band Full Moon titles, but I was actually pleasantly surprised by how fun and charming it turned out to be. It's got a very like 1950s, 1960s classic horror vibe, and the comedic tone was actually very fun and didn't make me groan at any point. I like that 99% of Larry Drake's dialogue is just jokes about his victims' medical bills. Like, I don't think he has an actual conversation with anyone in the film. It's just all just like really bad doctor jokes.
Yeah, I love the gag with the giant mouth and the tongue depressor.
Yeah,
It's just such a great visual.
The one scene that really stuck out to me that made me love this film was there's this amazing flashback scene depicting a young Dr. Giggles playing a practical joke with his deceased mother, which I won't spoil too much. But after that scene, this film had to get at least like a 4-star rating from me. So I got a feeling at least some of you guys have seen Dr. Giggles.
Have we covered it on the podcast?
Not yet, no. I mean, obviously, Larry Drake is kind of well known to us and many people listening, obviously, for Dark Knight the Scarecrow and Darkman and various other movies he was in. I did see, it's one of those things. I remember Dr. Giggles, and I was looking into some Larry Drake stuff recently for a project. And so I watched Darkman, and I kind of started watching bits of Dr. Giggles, and I can't. Again, it's one of those movies. It's kind of lost into the kind of VHS time warp, and whether or not I've actually seen the movie or just seen a trailer and knew about it from reading Fangoria, I don't remember. Although, to be honest, by that point, my kind of tolerance of kind of jokey slasher horror movies had kind of worn a little bit thin. So I certainly wouldn't mind revisiting at some point, and I'm sure it will turn up on the podcast at some point going forward. But what about you guys? Erik, have you seen it?
I don't think I have, actually. I know, obviously, I'm well aware of Dr. Giggles, but I think, like you, in the early 90s, I probably was looking for older titles rather than the ones that were current. So it kind of bypassed me then, and it's, 30 years later, it's still bypassing me. But I'm sure we'll pick it at some stage. It is a slasher, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I never really thought it was going to be, but yeah, it's total slasher.
Cool. And Joseph, what about you?
Yeah, I love Dr. Giggles. I think you both should give it a chance. There's a real mean streak to it, but it's not like mean. It's comically mean, very gallows humor. I love all of Larry Drake's very bad dental puns. I mean, there's just so many of them. It's just a fun movie.
Does the title character, is he named that because he keeps hearing my jokes of the week?
Or Dr. No Giggles. So, Matt, that may be one we will be covering in the not too distant future. But anything else?
Just two more. The next one is the Vampire Moth. This is a Japanese murder mystery from 1956 that I thought had a lot of interesting similarities to 1970s giallos. The story is set in the fashion industry where there's a lot of figurative backstabbing taking place, which ends up leading to a lot of literal backstabbing. The killer is dressed like the standard black glove giallo type. He's got black trench coat, sunglasses, mask, hat, except he takes his mask off early on in the film and reveals that he's actually a werewolf. That's not really a spoiler. But the werewolf makeup is worth pointing out because it's pretty bizarre, and it kind of reminded me of a Screaming Mad George effect. And the title, Vampire Moth, comes from the killer's modus operandi of stabbing the models in their breasts and leaving dead moths on top of their nipples, making them appear like they're drinking the blood, which feels very Japanese, but is also something I could totally see happening in a giallo film. The plot gets very complicated with a lot of red herrings and false reveals. I'm not even sure if I really understood the killer's motivations at the end of the film, but I think that also makes it even more comparable to a giallo from 70s or 80s. So Vampire Moth, have you guys seen that?
I've never heard of it. I want to see it now, though.
Never heard of it either.
Yeah, I mean, no one could accuse your taste of not being eclectic, Matt. From Dr. Giggles to Vampire Moth, so obscure kind of Japanese proto-giallo, although it sounds like it might be possibly slightly more akin or more influenced by Nathan's favourite subgenre, the German krimi, the Edgar Wallace kind of murder mysteries. That has piqued my interest, because I know we have covered, there was like Evil Dead Trap, there's a few, but Japan hasn't really gone in for the slasher movie as such. So it's kind of intriguing that they did a kind of proto-giallo or a kind of a Krimi-influenced murder mystery with a werewolf. That colour me intrigued. So excellent. And you said there was something else you wanted to mention.
Just one more. The Undertaker. This is one of Joe Spinell's last films, where he plays this murderous Undertaker and delivers the absolutely gnarliest loose denture performance of his career. He actually reminded me a lot of a certain ex-president, not to get political. But this wasn't too far off from Spinell's eventual demise. And he looks super rough throughout the film, but I think it just adds to his performance. But he does look so rough that I just imagined him dropping dead as soon as the shooting wrapped. There's also a lead actress who plays this really fun college teaching assistant who she's introduced while teaching her class about necrophilia, of all topics. The scene begins with her writing necrophilia across a chalkboard in like big, beautiful cursive. And she turns around with this like big, gleeful smile on her face and says, "Guess what, class? Today we're learning about necrophilia." And she's just super happy about it. The movie's credited with 2 directors, but one of those credits is actually the film's cinematographer, screenwriter, and producer, all under a single pseudonym. So there's actually 4 directors, which explains why this film feels like a very chaotic production. I was kind of thinking it was it felt like it was like an Italian film made in the US, but I don't think it is. But I really love this movie. I would say it's definitely a Nathan pick. I liked it so much that I almost considered changing it as my main pick for this episode instead of Ogroff. So have you guys seen that? I think Vinegar Syndrome put it out a few years ago.
I haven't seen it. I'm aware of it. I've kind of obviously know Joe Spinell from Maniac and the last horror film. And funnily enough, seeing him recently in kind of watches of Taxi Driver and The Godfather, sort of forgetting that he had that whole career before his horror exploitation thing. And so I always got it confused with like Mr. Robbie, like Maniac 2 and The Undertaker. They were 2 separate sort of distinct movies, but I haven't seen it. But again, you have piqued my curiosity. I'm not sure about. What about you, Joseph?
I started watching it. I think it was in a game on our forums a while back, so I started watching it, but I don't think I ever finished it.
Okay. What about you, Erik?
No, I've never seen it. No, I know of it, but haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, you've given us plenty to think about, Matt. So, we'll see after Ogroff whether or not we trust your recommendations.
Put him on the blacklist of people never to have back on the show again.
No, well, we'll see. Time will tell. But is anything else, Matt?
That's all I got.
Okay, right. Well, Erik, I believe last night you saw a sneak preview of a certain highly anticipated sequel.
Yes. So, complete antithesis of Ogroff, the Mad Mutilator. I saw the mega budget Alien Romulus last night and loved it. Really loved it. Now, you have to take with this a pinch of salt that I am a complete Alien fanboy. That Alien's probably my favorite franchise. Sci-fi horror is my thing. So I kind of turn into Nathan when it comes to the Alien franchise. Where I'll just like it no matter how good or bad it is. And you need to, when you hear my opinion, you need to take into account the fact that I loved Prometheus and I loved Alien Covenant as well, which were 2 films that were reviewed quite badly in places. So I don't know what the consensus is going to be on this one, but it's set 20 years after the events of Alien, the very first film. And then the opening credits actually takes place whilst this research team are investigating the debris from the Nostromo, which self-destructed at the end of Alien. And then it moves to this mining planet where 5 young... Yeah, so it's got a younger cast is the thing, I suppose, that distinguishes this from the others in the franchise. They're all sort of... I don't know what age they're meant to be, but they all look about 20-ish. So there's 5 of them, and there's an android sidekick as well. And they see the chance to get off this mining planet that they're stuck on and go to a better world. But what they need is cryo chambers, which are those things you go into hypersleep in, because to go to this Paradise Planet they have their hearts set on will take 9 years. So they discover there is a Weyland-Yutani derelict spacecraft in the orbit of their planet, so they scoot up to investigate it and see if they can pilfer anything from inside, and that's where they discover that there are some aliens there. And not only are there some aliens, there's also a surprise guest that I won't say anything more about, but if you read the IMDb page, you'll soon figure out what I mean. It's big on a long build up like the first Alien, so you don't really get to see a facehugger of any kind until maybe an hour into the film. Not that the first hour is boring in any way. I thought I was really into it. Second hour is full of mayhem. There's some brilliant stuff involving zero gravity gun battle with the aliens, which possibly one of the best set pieces of the entire franchise, in my opinion. It has fewer characters compared to Prometheus and Alien Covenant. That was one of the things I agreed on with those two films, was there was too many characters and probably too much going on. This is much simplified. It has the simplicity of the first movie. It's restricted to sort of 6.5 characters. Again, you'll know what I mean when you see it. There's nothing terribly original about it. This is one of the things people are saying on social media who've seen it. They say, some people are saying it's brilliant because it has so many nods to Alien and Aliens, and other people are saying, oh, it's not original enough, it's paying too much homage to those movies. But I loved it for that. There is one moment where somebody says, "Get away from her, you bitch," which feels so shoehorned in and so hokey. It's almost like I've had it with these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane. So that stands out a bit. But other than that, it's action-packed. The finale, I think there's a development in the final 15 minutes that will divide opinion. I liked it. And I just thought it was a brilliant film. It had a slow build-up, but then plenty of action in the second half, plenty of scares, and plenty of aliens and spaceships. And that's all I ask of an Alien film. So I loved it. But I did go with somebody who liked the first half but didn't like the second and felt that there was too many endings.
And it was directed by the guy who did the Evil Dead remake?
Yeah, Fede Alvarez. He did Don't Breathe as well. So, the Evil Dead remake I thought was okay. I thought it was too grim for me for an Evil Dead franchise movie, but I did really like Don't Breathe. Okay. I'm kind of not exactly ambivalent about the later Alien films. I like Alien and Aliens and Alien 3, Alien 4 less so. But after that, Prometheus, I've kind of dipped into them and watched them once. They were a little bit too pretentious, perhaps. The black goo from Prometheus and Alien Covenant makes an appearance in this, but I think that's the only holdover from those movies. Okay, so it sounds like it's going back in a slightly more popcorn. Yeah, that's what it felt like. Yeah, territory. So, Matt, are you a fan of the Alien films?
I've seen the first two, which I obviously love, and then I saw the fourth one when it came out, and I think I kind of liked it. I liked Prometheus, and so I would totally go see it. I was actually really surprised that there was a new Alien movie coming out. I just found out about it recently, so yeah, it sounds good.
Isn't there also an Alien TV series?
Yeah, called Alien Earth, I think it's called.
It's filming at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I always kind of thought it was the original was meant to be like a haunted house in space, essentially, wasn't it? It was because it's a horror movie. So I kind of felt some of the later movies kind of got away from that into more kind of sci-fi kind of stuff. But yeah, no, and so yeah, looking forward to that. So it obviously sounds like it's got more of a horror bent to it. And Joseph, what about you?
Everything you just said, I agree with.
Well, there you go for time. So, excellent. Anything else, Erik?
No, that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Joseph, how about you?
Yes, I finally caught up with the 13th Alley, and I could seriously go on and on about this thing ad nauseum, but since we are being a little more conservative with our time these days, I will just say that I enjoyed it. It's the Room of slasher movies to me. It's just so very bad. Those stock sound effects and the absolute piss poor mixing in particular had me cracking up often, especially during the moments when the killer is about to swing that big battle axe. They have this sound effect that's like, I don't know. I think it was just supposed to be some random creepy noise to underscore the killer's presence, but it sounded like the killer had like a hot bowl of stew, and then something was brewing in his stomach. And I kept thinking, someone get this person a bottle of Donna gel or something. But yeah, it's a terrible movie, but a lot of fun. And I pretty much agree with your review on Hysteria Lives, Justin. And I still can't believe this got shown on 72 screens. Like, how?
Did you say it was called The 13th Alley? Yeah.
Yes.
I just Googled it. It's directed by Bob Hoskins.
Yes. What a coincidence
Well,
that is.
it's Bob Hopkins, but it's close enough.
Okay. I was going to say he came back from the grave just to direct this movie. But yeah, Matt, have you ever had the pleasure? I know it's an obscure one.
I've actually, you've stumped me, Joseph. I'm looking at the poster. It looks amazing. Does a woman's head actually get used as a bowling ball, or is that a spoiler?
Actually, more than once, I believe. Yeah.
Now, the Wikipedia page is only listing 4 cast members. Is there only 4 cast members in it?
No, there's like 12, but
I imagine
I don't think it's
some
anyone that's famous or anything except one person. But.
Robert Carradine.
Yeah, maybe the others went on and edited themselves out of the Wikipedia page for
possibly,
reasons that may become apparent if you ever get to watch it.
I would.
But it is quite a bad, if you like bad movies, it's a fun bad movie rather than a boring bad movie.
It's kind of missing a Tommy Wiseau. I mean, Robert Carradine tries, but he's just no Tommy Wiseau in that department. It really needed that, but it is the type of movie that you'd want to go see at a midnight showing at a movie screen with a bunch of rowdy people, so I enjoyed it.
I mean, it's a fun, you can't really go that wrong. Well, you can go very wrong, but, a group of teens or early 20-somethings locked in a bowling alley with a killer dressed as like a medieval knight with a huge chopper.
Yeah. It's like, why that in a bowling alley? Why not wear like a pin mask or something?
Yeah. So anyway, that's one maybe we should pick at some point for the show, because I think it would have a lot of fun talking about that. But anything else, Joseph?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. Well, I just got the one thing I managed to see. I've mentioned before, because obviously I live in Spain, and we got a little it's kind of 4-screen cinema not far from us. And the Spanish tend to dub everything into Spanish. So any kind of Hollywood thing, and maybe some art house movies, they don't dub, but anything else is dubbed. So they show one movie a week in English in Spanish subtitles. So you get a lot of Spanish people coming along to do kind of homework, I kind of guess, to sort of learn English. And usually it will be whatever kind of chick flick or Marvel or kind of kids animated movie. But bizarrely, last week it was Osgood Perkins' Long Legs, which I was very surprised at, and obviously I couldn't turn that down, so I went along and watched that, and I really enjoyed it. I certainly, I've seen people say it's not really a horror movie, and I thought it definitely was a horror movie, because I watched The Black Coat's Daughter, which I think is also released this February, which from about 10 years or so ago. And his themes have got this kind of, all of his themes have this thread of the occult and Satanism, I kind of guess, running through them. And this, without any too much spoilers, this has a similar thing, but it also kind of sets itself up a bit like a Silence of the Lambs. You've got Maika Monroe, who is so good in It Follows, and doesn't seem to pick a bad movie, playing a FBI agent who is on the trail of a serial killer who kills families, and she seems to have developed some kind of psychic link to the serial killer, who is played amazingly by Nick Cage, who obviously, I'm a kind of a fan of Nick Cage's movies. Sometimes when he goes over the top, it's a lot of fun, but rarely does he actually approach kind of quite a scary persona. And in this, as a serial killer, the kind of high pitched sort of killer of this, that he actually kind of is pretty creepy and quite scary, which surprised me. It's certainly for people who kind of want more kind of popcorny thrills. It's a little bit esoteric and a little bit out there, especially as it goes on. But I was surprised when people said that it wasn't really a horror movie, because I thought it definitely had all those elements, a fair bit of gore, and also kind of flirting with occultism and Satanism and all those kind of isms. But yeah, I thought it was really good. It was less kind of purposefully kind of ambiguous than the Black Coat's Daughter. But does any of you guys, Matt, have you seen Longlegs yet?
I did actually. I liked it for the most part. I definitely had some issues with it. I kind of thought the root cause of the killings, I don't know, it just felt a little over familiar to me, but that wasn't really a huge complaint. I like Nicolas Cage a lot. He was kind of giving me Tiny Tim vibes.
Yeah, I can see that.
I definitely would call it a horror movie, for sure. I wouldn't dispute that. But yeah, I had a good time.
Excellent. And Joseph, have you caught up with it yet?
No, I definitely want to see it, but no, it's not made its way here yet.
Okay. And Erik, I take it no. Not last time we spoke.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Okay. Well, from Longlegs to something completely different, do we have a trailer for this?
Well, there are clips from the film acting as trailers on YouTube, but they're all quite lengthy, and I haven't had much of a chance to figure it all out yet, so you may or may not hear something, depending, and if you don't, here we go. Trephined and having suffered the removal of an eye during the war, Ogroff, the mad lumberjack, continues to fight the war long after its conclusion, savagely massacring all those who enter his forest. And that was from the back of the original 1983 American video label release of Ogroff Mad Mutilator out of France, at least a Google translated version of the plot description, which sees the titular character Ogroff, pretty much doing exactly what the plot synopsis describes, with little to no story. Actually, Ogroff Mad Mutilator is a part of what all the cool kids these days are calling murder drone films, which essentially, and feel free to correct me if I'm mistaken on this, are these extremely gory but extremely cheap excuses to kind of showcase one extended murder sequence after another while the music and sound effects kind of reach a drone frequency with little to no dialogue coming from the actors, if you want to call them that. It's a subgenre I'm only surface level familiar with. I've seen the Violent Shit films and a couple of others, the names of which kind of escape me at the moment, but they all kind of pretty much behave the exact same way. And I wasn't a fan of those. And while I appreciated a lot of what Ogroff Mad Mutilator had to offer, I more or less got the exact same feeling that I got watching all those Andreas Schnoss splatter films out of Germany. I mean, the gore gags are kind of neat in a cheap jack sort of way, but I began to kind of grow bored after a few minutes of it, if I'm honest. And unfortunately, it kind of comprises much of the running time. I mean, come to think of it, I got pretty much the same feeling from this as I did in A Violent Nature recently, though that one is far less experimental visually, I think. But like that movie, there's no character pathos here. You know, there's not much of a story behind, beyond that kind of silent movie theatrics that it's got going on. There's no suspense. There's no atmosphere. There's nothing really of the sort that would kind of speak to those of us with a hunger for the more traditional slasher movie structure. I mean, it feels like a Super 8 student film with like a low hum soundtrack with very occasional dialogue snippets. And that in and of itself may or may not induce sleepiness. However, like a lot of those kind of murder drone movies I've caught glimpses of through the years, even if I didn't like them, there was something oddly hypnotic and satisfying, with being able to say you sat through one of them, for better or for worse. And the feeling is more or less mutual here. I mean, I really enjoyed the kind of chutzpah of Ogroff, if I didn't exactly enjoy the movie itself. The camera work is shoddy and erratic, but it's also very avant-garde and arresting. It's very necessary for the tone of this film. It opens with this, it's not too shocking, but it's still pretty ballsy murder of this young kid. And I must admit to kind of laughing out loud when, after Ogroff has killed the kid and he's dragged the kid's corpse through the woods, they superimpose the title card and this blood splash effect right over a shot of Ogroff's ass. And I'm like thinking, okay, what a weird shot there. I also concocted a drinking game at all of the gasping and gurgling sound effects the players make during the death scenes, or even when Ogroff is just walking around, or when the zombies crawl out of the ground, and then there's more murder and there's more zombies that show up. I forgot to mention that. There's a lot of zombies that show up at the end of this movie, and I'm thinking, okay, this kind of took a left turn here, and this is pretty much the kit and caboodle that you can expect from Ogroff, the Mad Mutilator, over the next 80-odd minutes. I mean, it's a film that kind of wallows in that straight-ahead gore and murder and the the kind of the weird experimental nature of the story, and the shoddiness and the straight-line ambience of it all kind of adds a unique charm to it that, may or may not appeal to you. So I kind of like this. I didn't hate it. I didn't like it. I kind of liked it. It's hard to explain. I'm not very big on the murder drone films. I don't know enough about them to kind of comment or contrast this with anything else except those violent shit films. But, for what it is, it's something, Matt. So why did you choose this? What do you think about this film?
Well, I chose the film because I genuinely love it. It just makes me happy every time I watch it, and I felt like it was probably something you guys weren't going to get around to choosing anytime soon. So I really just chose it on an impulse, and then almost kind of immediately regretted it after I picked it. But I came across Ogroff around 2009, which was a period where it felt like there was kind of a lull between the DVD boom and the eventual onslaught of boutique Blu-ray labels that had yet to arrive. I was starting to feel like there was less and less new discoveries via DVD labels like Anchor Bay and Blue Underground. So I was starting to branch outside of that bubble and look for new discoveries via gray market websites. I first read about Ogroff on Bleeding Skull's website, and everything about that review made me very curious to see it. I was really striving to find films where something insane happens at least every 5 minutes. Just give an example, around this period, I had discovered the French slasher Devil Story and the Japanese film House. So these were the kind of films that I was getting really excited about at the time. When I first watched the movie, I was immediately intrigued with the sound design. I've been listening to a lot of harsh and experimental music since my 20s, so the film's approach of a warp lo-fi synths that completely drop out whenever someone speaks or gets killed, that was very appealing to me. When I watch this movie, it kind of has a similar effect as watching an ASMR video. It's very tactile in that I almost feel like I could reach out and touch the Super 8 film. And what I really like about the audio is that it really washes over you and kind of makes you feel like you're drowning, but like you're already in the peaceful stage of drowning. So it's kind of like the good kind of drowning, I guess. As far as the slasher content, the movie begins with Ogroff killing a little kid, so that's an instant win for me. Ogroff himself is this amalgamation of Jason Voorhees and Leatherface, but with this quaint European countryside flavor to him. He's got a beanie on with a sweater vest and galoshes, which is actually kind of an adorable ensemble. And his mask is this sort of cut up football that I think has like cufflink studs stuck in the middle of it. He proceeds to chase after the dead kid's mom. And when I first watched it, my immediate concern is Ogroff going to spend the entire movie chasing this mom? Which I kind of felt like was the direction the movie was heading in. But once we get to Ogroff's house, my worries subsided because one bonkers thing starts happening one after the other. I guess Ogroff is the kind of film that's so detached from reality and lacks any common rules of filmmaking that it kind of ceases being a slasher film and sort of becomes this kind of fascinating piece of outsider art. So I'm a fan of the film. I've screened it for friends, and it's always been a great time.
Cool. Who should go next? Well, Justin, you said you've reviewed this. So, Erik, what did you think of Ogroff?
Okay, well, long before Skinamarink, there was Ogroff. Because I felt, you were saying about drone horror, and that was me. That was the first I learned about drone horror, so thank you for that, Joseph. I think this was like ambient horror, which is the In a Violent Nature / Skinamarink approach to filmmaking. This is very unique. I will give it that. It's kind of like it has a tone poem feel, much akin to Jean Rollin and Jess Franco, because for it plays for such long stretches without any dialogue. And it feels like a Jess Franco film in that way, and it has lots of jump cuts, and it and this is kind of stating the obvious, but it feels kind of made up as it went along. It also seems to be trying to be a kind of a French Super 8 version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I got that vibe as well from the killer that Matt was saying there. There was lots of skulls and crosses, outside the killer's lair. And then there's an extended scene of somebody waving a chainsaw in the air as well. So I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre must have been something the director of this was watching quite a lot. For that first hour, it is merely just a string of set pieces where Ogroff murders various people hiking through the woods, and it's like a French silent movie. A silent version of Don't Go in the Woods. The editing's really rough. It jumps around all over the place. It's hard to make any sense of it at all, but like you, Joseph, I'd be lying if I said it didn't have a certain charm. We get to see people chopped up. We get to see that child we don't see the child being decapitated, but we see, him about to start sawing its head off. And I loved the fact that parts of it looked ever so slightly sped up, which added to that silent movie feel. Because that slightly I think it's something to do with silent movies being shot at 16 frames per second or something like that, and when watched on modern equipment they have that slightly sped up look, which is what Ogroff has a lot of, which added to I expected sort of a tinkly piano score to come in at some stage to really add to it. I did love the guys in the Renault who appear to stop for the damsel in distress, only for one of them to jump out of the car and tell her to use your legs, silly. In French, obviously, and then he drives off. It kind of reminded me of the similar scene in Friday the 13th final chapter. I'm not sure why the mom starts following the killer so closely as he's pushing his bicycle through the woods. This is where maybe some dialogue might have helped. She follows him, and then he turns around and captures her, and she ends up getting chopped to pieces, and I couldn't really figure out what her motivation was for that. The movie does take a few detours in the second half. Ogroff gets a girlfriend to add an emotional heft to the story. He has a hovel he lives in the woods, which is very similar to Jason Voorhees' one in Friday the 13th Part 2. So I'm guessing that might have been an influence also. But the victims of Ogroff return as zombies in a twist that we also saw recently in Killing Spree. And then there's the sort of vampire twist at the end as well. So there probably is. It sounds like there's a lot going on, even though it's a very languid pace and it's devoid of any kind of script. I did like the interlude where she meets that guy, the girlfriend character meets that guy hanging from the tree who comes back to life, and she uses a very novel approach to decapitate him. I thought that was a really fun part. And there are parts of it I liked. It was difficult to stay focused on it for 87 minutes, though. For me, it was best watched in bite-sized chunks, it could have done with being a lot shorter, like Nathan Johnson's 5-minute epics on YouTube, because there's a real sort of selfish relative quality to the film overall. If you take that opening scene where he's chasing the mom around the car, I can almost hear Nathan.
Erik, that's a great way to describe a bad movie from now on. It's got a selfish relative quality to it.
Yes. But when he's chasing the mom around the car, I can almost hear Nathan off camera going, "Action, mama." I liked the bit with the zombie soldier coming out of the wall. It looked like an image from Philadelphia Experiment. I thought that was quite effective. And I saw nods to the burning in there as well, where Ogroff jumps out of the boot of the car and he chops he chops a zombie's fingers off with the shears. But
you see the silhouette of the shears in the sky too.
Exactly, exactly like
they had to have seen the burning.
Yes, I would imagine so. The problem with the film is that the scenes play out way longer than they would in a normal film. You get the endless scene of those 4 sort of younger folks sitting around in the field with their Citroen 2CV. with a little Bontempi keyboard noodling playing in the background, and it goes on and on and on and on. But it does culminate in a very funny scene where Ogroff takes his rage out on the car with a sledgehammer. And he takes his rage out a lot because it goes on for about what feels like for about 20 minutes, because he has to, first of all, he's smashing all the windows.
I started feeling bad for the car.
Yeah, then he's smashing the bonnet, then he lifts off the bonnet and starts taking out the engine. So it's a very unique film. It's not to everyone's taste. I thought it had a charm, but maybe it was a bit too rough around the edges for it to sustain an 87-minute runtime. There's long stretches where not a whole lot is happening, or something is happening, but it's happening, in a sort of repetitive, tedious kind of fashion. But there is something mesmerizing about its incredible sort of lo-fi nature. And I suppose the fact that it's French and the fact that it's shot on Super 8 and plays like a silent movie gives it a very unique flavor. So it kind of differentiates itself from shot on video movies of the 80s. So I wouldn't say it's something I'd ever watch again, but I'd no problem watching it the once, because it certainly was quite an experience. So that's my tuppence.
Awesome. And Justin, I know you've reviewed this upcoming for Hysteria Lives, so give us a sneak peek of your review.
Okay, well, I'll read the first paragraph. I put, with production values barely higher than a home movie, your appreciation or otherwise for this film will depend on your tolerance for zero-budgeted but enthusiastic trash. Supposedly made by a video shop owner who wanted to make a few francs, renting this out to his horrified customers. It features a war veteran lumberjack in a mask who roams the woods and kills picnickers with an axe for no discernible reason. Very much rinse and repeat until zombies and a vampire turn up in the last reel. Featuring post-looped sound, music that sounds like a foghorn and a Bontempi organ getting it on in the wind tunnel, and an axe masturbation scene that gives a whole new meaning to Big Chopper. Not to mention a preteen child having a head sawn off, and well, you have Ogroff, France's answer to the golden age of the slasher movie. I will say one thing in its defence: it is arguably the best film ever made by someone called Norbert. This movie, it's the first time watching me. Certainly, I was aware of it. And I think possibly its kind of lo-fi nature kind of put me off, although I was always intrigued because I'm always on the lookout for films from around that time and that kind of golden age. So it's for me, it reminded me very much of the kind of movies that me and my friends would make in the early 90s with a video camera. In fact, there was one that we made, like a slasher movie, murder mystery, just on a Saturday afternoon. Made up as we went along, which was lost to the mists of time. But so it kind of, I know, it's a shame. But this had that feel to it. Certainly the second half of the zombies, which is very much Jean Rollin sort of Zombie Lake-esque, of the zombies kind of stumbling through the woods in various stages of decay, very much felt like something that a group of friends got together on the weekend and said, this is what we're going to do. So again, if you were expecting a coherent slasher movie, you would kind of be disappointed. It is, like you say, it's very much a series of vignettes kind of added, sort of loosely linked together with the character of Ogroff. I mean, I just thought it was funny. I was thinking about how this movie, as far as I'm aware, never got released in the United Kingdom, because I'm just thinking that you had, if you actually listed all the gore that happened, including the preteen having their head sawn off, although it's mostly off screen, after being axed to death, and not only head sawn off in front of her mother, who's tied to a pole, surrounded by plastic skulls. And if you actually read that out as, to a group of politicians in early 80s, Great Britain, there would have been a lot of screams and Daily Mail headlines about it. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's not particularly offensive, as far as things go, because a lot of the gore is very much kind of dime store variation. There's a few effective gore gags, one with an axe to the face, but most of it is kind of enthusiastic, kind of amateur stuff, and a lot of the more explicit stuff is kind of off screen, like the sawing off of the head. I did appreciate the kind of the fact that it wasn't taking itself too seriously. The whole thing of attacking that Citroen to CV or whatever it was is probably the most iconically French car, or certainly budget French car you can imagine. Also, the fact that the killer kind of goes from murder spree to murder spree on his bicycle, It seemed to be very French as well. It kind of surprised. I mean, it threw everything but the kitchen sink into it, including Howard Vernon turning up at the end as this kind of priest vampire who just appears kind of literally in the final reel. Quite how, maybe you know, Matt, when we get some background, how they got him, because I know he certainly, the actor wasn't adverse to kind of low-budget horror movies. He'd done lots of stuff for Jess Franco. For me, it felt very much like a film that was made by somebody who enthusiastically wanted kind of like a home movie, really, on Super 8 and roped their friends in weekends. But it has a certain hypnotic quality that you could never sort of say is good filmmaking necessarily. But sometimes when somebody is not limited by talent or budget, they can sometimes create something that is kind of unique, I kind of guess is a good way of putting it. So I certainly didn't hate it. I don't think it's not a good movie. It's not a coherent movie. A lot of the time it's out of focus. It's obviously shot without sound, and there's any sound that's dubbed back in, the sound's very phony and it doesn't really work. But it has a kind of weirdness to it that isn't art house by any stretch. But it achieves its own kind of level in sanity, and it's certainly one of a kind when it comes to early 80s slasher movies. So we'll give it that.
Well, Matt, do you have anything else to say on Ogroff, or should we move on to background?
I'll point out, having rewatched this movie twice in the last week, that it actually seems like there were actually story points that I hadn't noticed before. Like I never realized that Ogroff was meant to be a war veteran, and that those zombies were actually Nazis that he killed and were keeping in his makeshift basement.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just thought they were the random people from the woods that he killed.
There's a newspaper article that the girlfriend looks at, I think, that kind of explains his whole backstory. I'll also say scenes like the masturbation scene, which seems like totally out of left field. I felt like on this rewatch, it seems to be a setup for him needing a girlfriend.
I hope that's all it's a setup for.
Yeah. And then at the end of the film, I never realized that Ogroff actually dies, seemingly. He gets an axe in the back. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it moment. But then at the last shot of the film, you see the camera driving by Ogroff, and he's walking along with the axe still lodged in his back. So I think now he's actually a zombie. So I think the ending is actually meant to be sort of kind of poetic in a way.
So it's kind of going to achieve some kind of dreamlike Jean Cocteau thing, which I know Eric's always very keen for me.
Justin. I know you're all about Jean Cocteau, but we know that you watch Michael Bay films day and night.
Oh, but of course. But I think Jean Cocteau would have liked those as well. But yeah, so even being like a trashy French slasher movie, and obviously we always use the words trash in certainly not a negative way. But you can't help but sort of try and achieve some kind of level of not sophistication, but allegory, maybe. I'm not sure the right word is. But certainly to sort of lift it into that slightly kind of fantasy realm. So, yes, I can definitely see in this playing with Bella Lebette. That's the Beauty and the Beast, the Jean Cocteau movie. This would make a great double bill with it, obviously.
I think it would make a great double bill with Old Federal Massacre too.
Yes. We'd certainly make a shorter double bill with that. So you had some theories, Matt, about why Howard Vernon. Do you think they just got him drunk on Pernod one afternoon?
He was well regarded for producing cinema fanzines, and 1980, I think he dedicated an issue of one of his fanzines to Jean Rollin, which granted him an interview, and I can go a little bit more into it when we get to a trivia, but that ended up starting a long friendship between the two, and that would have probably been around the same time Jean Rollin was filming Zombie Lake with Howard Vernon. So I'm going to guess that's probably how Norbert ended up scoring Howard Vernon to be in the film.
That definitely sounds very likely, yes. Well, why don't we move on to some background? And obviously, I mean, I must admit, it's the only thing I could really find out about this was that, and I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but everywhere you look, obviously, this movie isn't exactly regaled with huge retrospectives across the internet. Is the story that most often repeated about this is that it was made by someone who owned a video shop who wanted to make his own horror epic that he could rent out to his customers. Now, it sounds like it may be slightly more than that. So, what can you tell us, Matt?
Well, I can tell you, Norbert Moutier, if I'm getting the pronunciation right, I think that's pretty close. He was an accountant up until that point, and he did open a movie memorabilia shop at some point in the 80s. I'm not sure if it was before Ogroff or after, but he definitely, sold the movie along with other movies he made into the 90s at this shop. I'll just go ahead with my background. Norbert was actually, he was apparently inspired to make his own feature film by legendary exploitation director Andy Milligan. He apparently had read a cinema magazine that featured an article written by Andy Milligan explaining how to make cheap movies. So after reading that article, Norbert said, "Yes, I can do this too. I can make movies like Andy Milligan."
He certainly can.
And I think that factoid is probably legit because Ogroff features a lot of dismembered rubber hands, and that's an effect that Andy Milligan loved to use in his movies. I always assumed Ogroff was made by someone in their late teens or early 20s. It just kind of screams that sort of vibe to me. But Norbert was actually in his early 40s when he decided to make Ogroff, which kind of blew my mind and made me like the movie even more. It's like, yes, there's still hope after you turn 40. You can still make subversive and tasteless art and get away with it. And Norbert's, I think his primary goal was to make the first French slasher movie, which I think is a mostly accurate claim. I personally can't dispute that. All the actors in the movie were friends that Norbert had made through the fanzine circuit. His scenes were so well respected within that community that all these people were just super eager to be in this movie. Norbert plays Ogroff himself, and I'm pretty sure he's also the dad at the beginning of the movie who gets his head chopped off. He was actually assisted by makeup effects artist Benoit Lestan, he's noteworthy because he had previously worked with Jean Rollin. He had gotten to start doing The Living Dead Girl, I think just a year prior, and I think he was still in his teens. And he's had a pretty prolific career in makeup effects, and he's I think he's most recognized for working on Martyrs. So some actual like genuine talent came out of this movie. Besides Howard Vernon, another actor from Zombie Lake appears in this movie as the lumberjack who faces off with Ogroff with the chainsaw. So it really does sound like Jean Rollin was probably lending out some talent in order to help Norbert out. That actor recounted Norbert wanting to shoot additional outdoor scenes after the primary photography was wrapped, but the actor didn't want to go back to that shooting location. So they eventually compromised by going over to the actor's apartment and just covering his floor with leaves and grass and just shooting the scenes there. Another actor recounted having to go with Norbert to the butcher shop where they bought the entire supply of sheep tripe. But on the way to the forest, they ended up blowing a tire. So the actor had to spend all day sitting in the van with, that was full of rotting tripe. I've got a theory about that car dismantling scene. There's a shot where blood is flowing over an image of Donald Duck. And I watched an interview where Norbert recounts his first time going to the movies with his parents, and they took him to see Walt Disney's The Three Caballeros, which is an animated film starring Donald Duck. And Norbert said that he found it really juvenile and stupid, and he said he berated his parents for taking him to see it, even though he was only 5 years old and really shouldn't have had discerning taste at that young an age. So I'm wondering if that shot of Donald Duck was like a deliberate middle finger to Walt Disney over that childhood memory. Also, in the beginning of the movie, Ogroff is shown stopping on some Disney comics, so I do think he might have had a personal axe to grind with.
I don't think there's any doubt about this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Norbert premiered Ogroff at a Super A festival, and apparently was horrified that people were laughing at it. And I find it difficult to believe that he had zero comedic intent while making this film, but apparently that was the case. He was so upset by that screening that he removed scenes that featured the worst dubbing and sound syncing. So the existing film we're seeing now is actually a cut version of his original vision. He kept making movies into the 90s. Some were shot on film and some were shot on video. I went ahead and watched most of them for this episode. I watched 6 of his films altogether. He got John Rollin to star in 3 of them. The most noteworthy one being a parody of Reanimator called Trepanator. And what really makes that film worth checking out is that it features a ridiculous cameo by director Bill Lustig of Maniac and Blue Underground. He's getting tortured to death in the film, and he's really hamming it up. I couldn't find any background on how Bill Lustig ended up in that role. I'm going to assume Norbert probably made a connection with him through his fanzines. But I would really like to hear Lustig's account of filming that scene. So if anyone listening to this ends up catching him at a convention, I would appreciate it if you ask him about it and get back to me. One final thing is that I watched a interview with an actor who had been in a bunch of Norbert's 90s films. And he said that Norbert was a really big fan of Bruno Mattei, so much so that he speculated that he was actually trying to emulate Mattei's filmmaking style, and I can definitely believe that.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Well, that's probably a lot more than any of us have got. Erik, what have you got?
I had exactly word for word, believe it or not, everything Matt said.
Of course you did. And I imagine, Joseph, would that be, would you have exactly what Erik's just said?
Actually, I have a little bit extra. The American video release out of France from 1983 is the only release that I'm aware of. I don't think it, you said it did not get released in the UK. I know it did not get released here until DVD. So I love that cover for that France video, on American video. I wish I had it, but I don't. That's all I have.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything extra to add apart from just a couple of observations. One was, or kind of recollections. I do remember going to France and picking up, they had their own version of Fangoria called Vendredi 13, so basically Friday 13th, in French, and it was their kind of own gore zone, or Fangoria. And I picked up the issue that was celebrating Friday the 13th, Part 7. So what would that be, 1987, I kind of guess?
88, yeah.
87, 88. So, and I remember it actually had some gore images in that I'd never seen anywhere before or since for that movie. So, I mean, when you think of France, you don't necessarily think of them making these kind of horror movies in the same way as kind of Italy did, but certainly there was kind of an underground sort of, or kind of a less celebrated kind of French horror movie industry for everything from like Eyes Without a Face right through to the more lyrical vampire movies of the 70s, and then obviously Jean Roland's kind of Living Dead Girl and is it The Grapes of Death?
Yeah.
Which are kind of very kind of gore orientated, surprisingly. And of course, then you had the new wave of French horror with, as you mentioned, Martyrs, and probably started with Switchblade Romance, as it was known here, like Haute Tension, and what's the other one? Inside as well. So yeah, so it was interesting. So where this kind of falls within that. Now, I haven't seen Devil's Story, but I presume you have seen that, Matt. Is there anything? Is that more? I mean, what's that like compared to Ogroff?
It's probably a little bit more of a traditional movie than Ogroff, but it's still very insane and definitely in Nathan's territory.
Cool. I did see there was one French film I did review.
Don't give him any ideas.
Yeah, don't give him any ideas. But I did review on Hysteria Lives. It was Tracking from the mid-'80s, I think it was, or early '80s, which is a very bizarre French movie about someone dressed like the killer from The Prowler, going around sort of menacing girls in a house. But it certainly wasn't a traditional slasher movie. So there's always that slight French take on stuff. So, but yeah, no, I mean that's fascinating. I mean, all those extra things about Norbert that I had no idea about. So that's I really appreciate you bringing that knowledge and insight, Matt.
Happy to do it.
So, but one question I do have for you, Matt. I know you said you had an interest in kind of extreme music. So, one question: Susie or Toya?
Well, I've thought about this long and hard, and I'm just gonna have to say, sorry, let me back up. I almost blew that. Susie.
Susie.
But let me say I have no issue with Toya. I think Toya is perfectly fine.
Okay, well that's very diplomatic of you, but yes, well you're welcome back on any time, Matt. And for something that obviously is probably less welcome is Erik's joke of the week. So let's see. It's obviously got the budget of Ogroff, but let's see what he comes up with this time.
It's my joke of the week. It's so freaking fantastic.
Why couldn't Ogroff get any sleep in the countryside? Because he was so mad because the cows mooed till later. The cows mooed till later.
You used that same joke on the Mutilator episode. You said Mutilator.
Oh,
yeah,
Erik.
But this is different. This is mood till later. That's completely different.
It's not like us to recycle jokes on Hysteria Continues.
Well, here, I had a second backup one. What do you call it when someone writes on the wall about the Mad Mutilator's dining habits? Ogroff eaty.
Ogroff. Now that was good. I like that one.
I liked my mood till later one.
So you were talking about extreme noise, Matt. So does that extend to comedy for you?
Extreme comedy?
Well, I don't know if you could you describe your comedy as extreme, Erik?
It's edgy, it's fresh.
Okay.
I think harsh might be the right word.
Yes, unique. So, okay. Well, have we got any feedback, or are we going to keep that for next time?
We got the comments from social media.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, so we had 19 comments overall for Ogroff. Let's see what 3 we have from the top this week. We have from Facebook Joshua Grattan, our friend. He says, "The zombies overstay their welcome, but it's Murder Drone. Of course, I live for it. Goes great with Devil Story, Day of the Reaper, Foley's Muere, I'm not even going to pronounce that, and A Night to Dismember. It's fantastic." And I forgot about A Night to Dismember. Yeah, it's kind of similar-ish, maybe. On Instagram, OBDWellX says, "A great trash splatter, no budget, fever dream of a movie. Possibly the only slasher that turns into a zombie movie, then throws in a vampire priest for good measure. Reminds me of the first Violent Shit or Devil Story." And on YouTube, the Trash Pit says, "Gotta be honest, guys, this movie makes The Last Slumber Party look like Black Christmas. Love me a good no-budget venture, but this was hard to sit through from time to time, if I'm honest. Still, it possesses a certain charm in spots that gave me a good chuckle or two." Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, follow us there, and you'll stay up to date on all that we're up to. You can listen to us pretty much anywhere, though for purely selfish reasons, we prefer YouTube or Patreon. And if you haven't joined us on Patreon, we have a back catalog of over 200 bonus episodes covering general horror films, Fango magazines, quizzes, feature-length movie commentaries, you name it. Help support the show for as little as $1 per month. That's patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues. And we do have some feedback coming up. If you'd like to hear yours read out on the show, drop us a line at thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com. I almost stumbled through that. It's brand new. I've been reading the same one for so long.
Well, did a great aplomb. So, and Erik, you have some feedback for us.
Yes, I have some feedback here from Darren. He says, "Hi, Justin, Erik, Joseph, and Nathan. I hope this email finds you well and all is good in the land of Hysteria. Long-time listener to your podcast and a huge fan. I've been trying to catch up on the Blu-ray releases of episodes you've covered. The more obscure ones, the better. I recently watched The Newly Deads and Boarding House. Did they both get Blu-ray releases?
I believe so, yes.
Gosh. Both had some good elements, and given the budgets, they did a good job. Some of the kill effects, even if homemade, looked really good. Love your episodes on these, and it was great to hear your thoughts on these films and others. Hoping to watch Primal Rage, and next week your commentary on Funeral Home from 88 Films. So glad that they have revitalised the slasher classics lineup. Hoping for more releases to be announced, and with your involvement. Also going to Fright Fest for the 10th time this year, so can't wait for the end of August. Love the podcast and hope to hear some new episodes soon. Keep safe and long live the slasher movie. Thanks for your time, Darren. And he has a PS. I made a slasher-esque short during the lockdown in 2022 and would love some feedback. Currently working on a script for a more sinister idea, but this was a starting block for what we could do during those crazy times. And he's included a link to it. It's called Trauma. I didn't get a chance to watch it. Did any of you guys get to watch it yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet, but I will try to before we record next.
Well, to answer his question about the 88 lineup, we can make some announcements soon, so keep your ears peeled.
Well, obviously, yeah, Funeral Home has been announced, hasn't it? But we do have a few more. There's not so many. It sounds like we've done millions, but no, we've done a handful of other ones which I don't think have been announced yet for various labels. So obviously, when we can talk about them, we will.
And we've got at least one more to do.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yes.
One for a very...
It's a big one, too.
A big one, yeah.
Ooh, a big one, you say?
Ooh.
Oh, very big.
Matt, thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about that you're up to at the moment?
If anybody out there is interested in my creative endeavors, they can go to the social media apps and follow me at Worse Than Jail, all one word. I make art.
Oh, that's who you are. Okay, I know who you are now. Yep. Sorry.
That's me.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, well, I encourage everyone to check that out. And Matt, you certainly have brought a unique perspective to Hysteria Continues and for a very unique movie. So, what do we... I mean, it's Nathan's choice next time, isn't it? And obviously Nathan will be back better than ever. So what did he choose?
Well, yeah, it is a Nathan pick, but it's also a listener pick. So we'll be joined by Jenny Hall Cameron to discuss The Final Girls, which I think is one of your favorites, Justin.
I do enjoy it. It's kind of yes, it's
and Nathan picked it. Wow.
And Nathan picked it. I would say it probably is a kind of possibly the polar opposite of Ogroff, but it'll remain to be seen. But and what are we playing out with?
No, I think you can say that. It does not remain to be seen.
Yes. What are we playing out with?
Playing out with, I don't know, maybe just some la-di-da French music.
Well, okay. Matt, thank you again for joining us on the Hysteria Continues. And you get to say goodbye to the good people like the rest of us. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Oui, bye, monsieur, whatever French, I don't know.
Sacre bleu.
Sacre bleu, whatever.